I stood frozen in my new apartment, surrounded by platters of untouched food and cheerful decorations that now seemed to mock me. The notification on my phone glared up at me, my father's words cutting deeper than any knife could. Having dinner at Madison's instead. Your apartment is terrible anyway. Years of always being second best to my perfect sister flashed through my mind as I fought back tears. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now I was completely alone. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my spiral of pain. When I opened the door, there stood my grandmother, Nancy, her eyes warm, and knowing a mysterious wooden box clutched in her weathered hands. I had worked so hard for this apartment. At 32 years old, I had finally scraped together enough money for a down payment after years of saving every penny. Teaching third grade at Franklin Elementary during the day and bartending at Murphy's on weekends had left little time for a social life, but it had been worth it to finally have a place to call my own. "Come in, Grandma," I said quickly, wiping away tears. "I wasn't expecting you." "Well, someone in this family needs to show up for you, Debra," she said, stepping inside and looking around with genuine interest. "This is just lovely. You've done a wonderful job." Her words were a balm to my wounded heart. For as long as I could remember, my sister Madison had been the golden child. 4 years older than me, she had married wealthy Thomas Blackwell right out of college and had never worked a day in her life. Their sprawling 5-bedroom house in the suburbs was the site of every family gathering, despite being nearly an hour drive for most of us. "I made all your favorites," I said, gesturing toward the dining table, set for 5 people. "Dad's favorite pot roast, Mom's spinach dip, and even those lemon squares Madison always requests." Grandma Nancy shook her head, her silver hair catching the light from the new pendant lamp I had installed myself. "Your parents should be ashamed. I told Gary this morning how excited I was for your housewarming." The memory of the phone call 2 hours earlier still stung. My mother's voice had been full of that familiar apologetic tone that wasn't really apologetic at all. "Something's come up, honey. Madison just called, and Thomas closed a big deal today, so they're hosting an impromptu celebration dinner. Your father and I need to be there. But you promised," I had said, hating how childish I sounded. "I've been planning this for weeks. You RSVP'd. We'll see your apartment another time. It's just a small place anyway, right? Madison's putting out that gorgeous china we got her for Christmas." I had spent 3 months renovating this apartment myself, painting every wall, refinishing the hardwood floors that had been hidden under cheap carpet, installing new fixtures in the kitchen and bathroom, all while working 2 jobs. But none of that mattered. My parents had missed my college graduation because Madison had gone into labor with her first child 2 weeks early. They had skipped my ceremony when I won Teacher of the Year because Madison was hosting a charity luncheon at her country club. Every milestone in my life seemed to coincide with something more important in Madison's. "Let's sit down and have some of this delicious food," Grandma Nancy said, bringing me back to the present. No sense letting it go to waste. As I grabbed plates from the kitchen, I noticed my hands were shaking. I had been so certain this time would be different. My first home. Surely that warranted my parents' attention for one evening. "Your father was always hard-headed," Grandma said as I served her some pot roast, "even as a boy. But I never thought he'd be blind to the wonderful person you've become." "It doesn't matter." I lied, sitting across from her at the table I had found at an estate sale and refinished. "I'm used to it." "It does matter," Grandma Nancy said, firmly placing her fork down. "And that's why I came. I have something for you." The wooden box Grandma Nancy placed on the table looked ancient, its surface worn smooth from generations of handling. A delicate floral pattern was carved into the lid with the letter D in the center. "This isn't how I planned to give you this," she said, running her fingers over the carving. "But perhaps it's even more appropriate now." I watched as she opened the box, revealing a stunning silver bracelet nested on faded blue velvet. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, with intricate Celtic knotwork surrounding 5 small sapphires. "It's beautiful," I whispered, afraid to touch it. "It belonged to my grandmother, Elizabeth Grandma," Nancy said, "and her grandmother before that. It dates back to the 1850s when your great-great-great-grandfather William Davis, made his fortune in shipping. I knew little about this side of our family history. My father rarely spoke about his ancestors, focusing instead on my mother's supposedly aristocratic lineage. In our family, this bracelet isn't passed down simply to the eldest daughter, Grandma continued. It goes to the woman who embodies the spirit of Elizabeth Davis, who worked alongside her husband building that business when women weren't supposed to have heads for such things. She lifted the bracelet from its velvet nest and held it out to me. It goes to the daughter who shows determination, independence, and character. That's you, Debra. My hands trembled as she fastened it around my wrist. The metal was cool against my skin, but quickly warmed. It felt right somehow, like it belonged there. Your parents wanted it for Madison, Grandma, said matter-of-factly. They've been hinting about it for years, but the choice was mine to make, and I chose you. I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat, so I just leaned over and hugged her tightly. There's something else you should know, she said, after we'd eaten in companionable silence for a while. Something I've been struggling with whether to tell you. Her expression had grown serious, and I felt a flicker of apprehension. What is it? Your grandfather, James, my Albert's father, was a careful man with his money. When he died, 20 years ago, he left specific provisions in his will. There was money set aside for each grandchild's education. I frowned trying to process this information, but I took out student loans for college. I'm still paying them off. Grandma Nancy's eyes filled with sorrow. I know. When Albert died 5 years before his father, I was so consumed with grief that I didn't pay enough attention to the estate matters. Gary, your father, handled everything as the only son. It wasn't until last year when I was going through some old papers that I found copies of the original will. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a folded document, sliding it across the table to me. There was $50,000 designated for your education, Debra, and another $70,000 as a trust that you were supposed to receive when you turned 25. My mind reeled as I scanned the legal document, the formal language swimming before my eyes. But the amounts were there in black and white, along with my name. I don't understand, I said, though. A terrible suspicion was forming. What happened to the money? Your parents used your education fund to pay for Madison's wedding. That monstrosity that cost over $100,000. And the trust. She hesitated. I believe they used it to help Madison and Thomas with the down payment on their house. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. All those years working overtime to pay student loans, living with 3 roommates in a tiny apartment, sacrificing vacations and new clothes, and even proper health care at times. All while my parents had stolen my inheritance to shower more gifts on my already privileged sister. How could they do that? I whispered, my voice breaking. That was my money. I've been trying to make it right, Grandma said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. I've consulted a lawyer, but it's complicated. Your parents had power of attorney at the time. I sat back in my chair, the bracelet suddenly feeling heavy on my wrist. This beautiful family heirloom had another layer of meaning now. It wasn't just a gift. It was Grandma Nancy's way of starting to restore what had been taken from me. There's more to the story of this bracelet than I've told you, she said quietly. Elizabeth Davis didn't just help with the family business. When her husband died young, she took it over completely and tripled its value. She was the true wealth creator in our family, but men took the credit. She tapped the wooden box. There are papers in the false bottom of this box. The true accounting of our family history passed down from mother to daughter. I think it's time you learned the whole story. As she lifted out the velvet lining to reveal yellowed papers beneath, I realized this evening was nothing like the housewarming I had planned. It was the beginning of something far more significant. The next morning, I drove to my parents' suburban home with the documents Grandma Nancy had given me, tucked safely in my bag. Sleep had evaded me most of the night, as questions tumbled through my mind. Had my parents really stolen my inheritance? Did Madison know how many other lies had shaped our family dynamics? I hadn't called ahead, knowing my mother would find some reason to postpone our conversation. Sunday mornings were usually safe. My parents typically lingered over coffee and the newspaper until nearly noon. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed Madison's silver luxury SUV already parked there. My stomach tightened, but perhaps this was better. If I was going to confront this situation, having everyone present would prevent multiple versions of the story from emerging later. I approached the side door that led directly into the kitchen the way family always entered. But before I could knock, I heard raised voices from inside. Pausing, I leaned closer to the partially open window. "It's not fair that she got the bracelet," Madison's familiar voice whined. "I'm the eldest. It should have gone to me." "Your grandmother has always had a soft spot for Debra," my mother replied. "But don't worry, we'll figure something out. That bracelet is worth a fortune, especially with its provenance." "I need it," Mom Madison said, her voice taking on an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. "You know our situation." "What good would pawning a family heirloom do?" my father interjected. "That's a temporary solution at best." "It would buy us time," Madison snapped. "Time Thomas needs to turn things around." I stood frozen, unable to move away from this conversation. I wasn't meant to hear. "The fact remains that Debra has the bracelet now," my mother said. "And you know how stubborn she can be. Always thinking she knows better than everyone else with her independence." She said the word like it was distasteful. "She doesn't deserve it," my father said flatly. "What has she ever achieved? An apartment in that rundown neighborhood and a job teaching other people's children. Madison has built something. She has status in this community." Their words pierced me like physical blows, each one confirming suspicions I had tried to dismiss for years. I had always told myself that my parents loved us equally, they just related to Madison better. But this was something else entirely. "We could tell her about Great Aunt Susan," my mother suggested. "How the bracelet should go to the firstborn daughter. Debra has always been sentimental about family traditions." "There is no such tradition," my father scoffed. "Mother just made that up to justify giving it to her favorite." Taking a deep breath, I rapped sharply on the door and then pushed it open without waiting for a response. 3 startled faces turned toward me. "Debra," my mother exclaimed, her hand flying to her throat. "We didn't hear you drive up." Clearly, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I heard enough, though." The kitchen fell silent. Madison looked away, a flush creeping up her neck. My father's expression hardened, while my mother's features rearranged themselves into a familiar, placating smile. "Honey, whatever you think you heard," she began. "I heard the truth for once," I interrupted, pulling out the documents from my bag. "And I have some questions about other truths that have been hidden from me, like the education fund Grandpa James set up for me, and the trust I was supposed to receive at 25. The color drained from my father's face. "Mother had no right to tell you about that." "No right," I repeated incredulously. "It was my inheritance. I've spent the last 10 years paying off student loans that I never should have needed to take out." Madison looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" So, she hadn't known. Somehow, that made it worse. Mom and Dad took the money Grandpa left, specifically for my education and future, I explained, not taking my eyes off my parents. "Over $120,000. They used it for your wedding and house down payment." "That money was for family needs," my father said defensively. "We made executive decisions about what was best for everyone." "Best for Madison, you mean?" I shot back. "Best for maintaining the illusion of success you've built around her while treating me like I don't matter." "That's not fair," my mother protested weakly. "Fair?" I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. "You want to talk about fair? I've worked 2 jobs for years. I've missed vacations and doctor appointments because I couldn't afford them. I've lived with strangers to save on rent, while paying off loans for an education that should have been fully funded." The back door opened then, and Thomas walked in, his tall frame filling the doorway. He looked tired, the confident businessman persona noticeably absent. His eyes took in the scene, lingering on the papers in my hand. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight. "Family discussion," my father said curtly. "About money that was stolen from me," I added. "And apparently about schemes to get Grandma's bracelet from me, too." Thomas's expression shifted, something like resignation crossing his features. "Madison, we talked about this. The bracelet isn't going to solve our problems." "What problems?" my father demanded. You just closed that big deal. You said everything was back on track." A heavy silence fell. Madison studied her manicured nails intently. "There was no deal," Thomas finally said, running a hand through his hair. "The company filed for bankruptcy last month. We've been trying to find a way to tell you." My mother sank into a kitchen chair. "But the house. We've missed the last 3 mortgage payments," Madison admitted in a small voice. "The bank sent a foreclosure notice last week." The revelation hung in the air, restructuring everything I thought I knew about my perfect sister's perfect life. All those years of envying her, of feeling inadequate next to her apparent success, and it had been built on deception. "So that's why you suddenly care about Grandma's bracelet," I said, touching the silver at my wrist. "It's not about family tradition. You just need the money. You've never understood what it's like to maintain a certain lifestyle." Madison snapped her vulnerability, instantly replaced by familiar condescension. "You've been content to live like a college student forever." "No, I've been forced to live within means that were artificially constrained because my family stole from me," I shot back. "That's enough," my father thundered. "I won't be spoken to this way in my own home. If you're just here to make accusations and stir up trouble, you can leave." I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not the father I had desperately sought approval from all my life, but a man who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll go. But this isn't over. Grandma has copies of all the legal documents, and I'll be consulting a lawyer about my options." "You would sue your own family?" my mother gasped. "My family," I repeated. "My family stole from me, lied to me, and now wants to take the one meaningful gift I've ever received. Why would I protect people who have never protected me?" I turned to leave, but Madison grabbed my arm. "You've always been jealous of me," she hissed. "This is just your way of getting back at me because your life is so pathetic. Your apartment is a joke. Your job is a joke. You're a joke, Debra." Something inside me that had bent and bent for years finally broke. "Let go of me, Madison, right now." Or what she sneered. Madison Thomas warned. "No. I want to hear what little Miss Perfect Teacher thinks she's going to do." Madison continued, her fingers digging into my arm. "Go ahead. Tell us your big plan to fix your sad little life." I looked her directly in the eyes, feeling strangely calm, despite the storm raging around and within me. "I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to stop pretending that any of you have my best interests at heart. I'm going to stop measuring my worth by your standards. And I'm going to make sure that justice is served even if it's decades late." I pulled my arm free and walked out, my father's voice following me. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over the fantasy of family approval I had chased for so long. The tears came as I drove away from my parents' house, blurring my vision so badly that I had to pull over on a quiet side street. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, great heaving sobs racking my body. 32 years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given, of measuring myself against impossible standards, and always coming up short. A car horn blared, startling me as I drifted slightly into the opposite lane. I jerked the wheel, overcorrected, and nearly clipped a parked car. Heart pounding, I pulled into the nearest parking lot, a small strip mall, and cut the engine. This was too dangerous. I couldn't drive in this state. Fumbling for my phone, I called the one person who had never let me down. "Allison, I need you." 20 minutes later, Allison's beat-up Honda pulled in beside my car. She took one look at my tear-streaked face and immediately enveloped me in a hug. "What happened?" she asked, guiding me to her passenger seat. "Did they hate the apartment?" "They never even saw it," I said, the words coming out between hiccuping sobs as I recounted the events of the past 24 hours. Allison listened without interrupting her expression, growing increasingly outraged. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. "I always knew your parents played favorites, but this is next level. They literally stole your inheritance, Deb. That's not just bad parenting. That's a crime." "I don't even know what to do now," I admitted. "Everything I thought I knew about my family is a lie." You do exactly what you told them you'd do, Allison said firmly. You talk to a lawyer, you protect yourself, and you stop letting these people determine your value. She drove me back to my apartment, staying for the rest of the day to help me clean up the remnants of the housewarming party that never happened. We boxed up leftovers, took down decorations, and finally ordered pizza as evening approached. I can stay the night if you want, Allison offered. Movie marathon ice cream, the whole broken heart recovery package. Thanks, but I think I need some time alone, I said. Process everything you know. After she left, I sat in the window seat. I had built myself looking out at the city lights. The bracelet caught the lamplight, sending small reflections dancing across my living room wall. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. For the first time, I saw my family for what they truly were, not what I had desperately wanted them to be. The next morning, walking into Franklin Elementary felt like entering another world, a world where I was respected, where my contributions mattered. Miss Davis, are you okay? Janet Reynolds, our principal, asked when she saw me in the copy room. You look like you haven't slept. I hesitated, then gave her an abbreviated version of what had happened. Janet had always been more than just a boss. She had been a mentor since I started teaching 6 years ago. I'm so sorry, Debra, she said when I finished. Family can hurt us in ways no one else can. I'll be fine, I said automatically. I just need to focus on work. Actually, Janet said, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. The district is launching an innovative literacy program next year. They're looking for a lead teacher to develop curriculum and coordinate across schools. I've recommended you for the position. I stared at her in surprise. Me? But there are more experienced teachers. None with your combination of skills, dedication, and creative approach, Janet said firmly. It comes with a significant pay increase and would reduce your classroom hours. I thought it might allow you to quit that bartending job. For the first time in days, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. I'd be honored. Thank you for thinking of me. Throughout the day, small kindnesses from my colleagues bolstered my spirits. Amy from 5th grade brought me coffee. Marcus, our music teacher, left chocolate on my desk with a note saying, "You're awesome." Even the kids seemed to sense I needed extra gentleness, behaving unusually well during math lessons. At the end of the school day, my classroom phone rang. Miss Davis, there's someone here to see you, our secretary announced. Expecting a parent, I was stunned to find Thomas standing awkwardly in the school office, looking decidedly out of place in his expensive suit. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Privately. I led him to my empty classroom, suspicion and curiosity warring within me. Madison doesn't know I'm here, he said immediately, perching uncomfortably on one of the small student chairs. After you left yesterday, things got ugly. I'm not surprised, I said cautiously. No, you don't understand. Your parents started talking about getting the bracelet back by any means necessary. They're desperate, Debra. I touched the bracelet, which I had worn to work, despite it not matching my casual teacher clothes. Why? What's really going on, Thomas? He sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older than his 38 years. The truth is, we're not just in financial trouble. We're completely underwater. The house, the cars, Madison's credit cards. We're over $300,000 in debt. I sat down at my desk, struggling to process this information. How is that even possible? You were making great money at the investment firm. I was, he agreed. Until I wasn't. I made some bad calls, lost some major clients, but Madison wouldn't accept cutting back. The country club membership, private schools for the kids, her shopping. It was easier to use credit than face her disappointment. And my parents, they've been helping us financially for years, Thomas admitted, paying for vacations, private school tuition, even our property taxes. But their retirement fund is nearly depleted now. Your father made some poor investment choices of his own. I shook my head in disbelief. So the perfect family facade was just that. A facade. Madison has a problem, Thomas said quietly. A spending addiction. She's in therapy now, but it's a long road. The thing is, she's always been so jealous of you. Of me, I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. She has everything. She has things Thomas corrected. You have independence, self-sufficiency, real friends. She sees that even if she'd never admit it. As he left, Thomas paused at the door. Be careful, Debra. Your parents are not thinking rationally right now. That bracelet represents a way out of the mess they've created, at least in their minds. That evening, I received another surprise visit. Several of my coworkers from Murphy's Bar showed up at my apartment, arms laden with food, drinks, and small housewarming gifts. Janet told us what happened with your family, explained Rick, who managed the bar. We figured you deserved a proper housewarming with people who actually appreciate you. For the next few hours, my apartment was filled with laughter and genuine warmth. Carlos, our cook, had prepared his famous enchiladas. Tina, another bartender, brought a beautiful potted plant. Even shy Eddie from the kitchen had come bearing a hand-knit throw blanket to make your window seat cozier. Looking around at these people who had chosen to celebrate with me, I felt a profound shift in my understanding of family. Perhaps blood wasn't the only thing, or even the most important thing that connected people to each other. The next day, I made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Reynolds, a therapist Allison had recommended. She listened attentively as I recounted my family history, occasionally asking clarifying questions. What you're describing is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic, she explained. Some parents, for various psychological reasons, divide their children into roles. The golden child can do no wrong and receives disproportionate praise and resources. The scapegoat becomes the repository for family blame and receives disproportionate criticism and deprivation. But why, I asked the question that had haunted me for decades. Often, it has nothing to do with the children themselves, Dr. Reynolds said. It's about the parents' unresolved issues. The golden child often represents the idealized self the parent wanted to be. The scapegoat might remind them of qualities they dislike in themselves or others who hurt them. I left that first session with a book recommendation and a strange sense of relief. There was a name for what I had experienced. It wasn't just in my head. And most importantly, it wasn't my fault. That evening, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Debra, it's Thomas again. Something's happened. Madison found out I came to see you, and she's furious. She's threatening to come to your apartment. I tried to stop her, but I thought you should know. As I hung up, a text message appeared from an unknown number. I know what you did. You turned my husband against me. You've always been jealous. I'm coming to get what's mine. I immediately called Grandma Nancy. Lock your doors, dear, she said after I explained the situation. Madison has always had her father's temper. I'm calling my lawyer right now. It's time we address this situation properly. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone was truly protecting me. As I double-checked my locks and drew the curtains, I realized I wasn't afraid. Whatever storm was coming, I would weather it. I had spent my entire life being the responsible one, the peacekeeper, the one who sacrificed. Now it was time to stand up for myself, come what may. The thing about wills, Sarah Winters said, spreading documents across her dining table, is that they're public record once they go through probate. After my panicked call to Grandma Nancy, she had immediately contacted her lawyer friend Sarah, who had invited us to her home the following Saturday morning. Sarah was in her 60s with short silver hair and piercing blue eyes that suggested she missed nothing. She had been Grandma's friend for decades and had a reputation for being ruthlessly effective in estate disputes. Your grandfather, James Davis, was very specific about his bequests, Sarah continued, pointing to highlighted sections of the legal papers. $50,000 in a designated education fund for each grandchild to be accessed only for tuition books and related educational expenses, plus $70,000 in trust for each grandchild to be distributed at age 25. I stared at the documents, seeing the evidence of my grandfather's intentions in black and white, and my parents had access to this money. As trustees, yes, Sarah confirmed grimly. When your grandfather died in 2003, your father was named executor of the estate, and your mother was the secondary trustee for the grandchildren's funds. They told me there was no money for college, I said quietly, that I needed to get scholarships and loans if I wanted to go. Sarah's expression hardened. That's not just morally wrong, it's legally actionable. Trustees have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of beneficiaries. You mean I could sue them? The thought made my stomach twist despite everything. You absolutely could, Sarah confirmed. And based on what Nancy has told me, you'd have a strong case. But litigation is expensive, time-consuming, and in family situations emotionally devastating. Grandma Nancy, who had been quietly listening, placed her hand over mine. There's something else you should see, Debra. She opened a leather portfolio and removed several yellowed photographs. The first showed a young woman in 19th century dress, proudly displaying a familiar silver bracelet on her wrist. That's Elizabeth Davis, in 1870, Grandma explained. And this is her journal. She carefully opened a small leather-bound book. Inside, in faded but elegant handwriting, was a detailed account of the Davis family business. I skimmed the pages, my eyes widening as I read Elizabeth's clear, insightful analysis of shipping routes, cargo values, and business partnerships. She was the business mind behind the Davis fortune, I realized. Exactly, Grandma nodded. And she left very specific instructions about the bracelet. She turned to the final pages of the journal, where Elizabeth had written her wishes. This bracelet represents not merely material wealth, but the spirit of independence and determination that has guided my life's work. It shall pass not automatically to the eldest, but to the daughter in each generation, who demonstrates these qualities as judged by the current keeper. Below this was a list of names and dates, showing the path the bracelet had taken through generations of Davis women. Sometimes it had gone to a firstborn daughter, sometimes not. The last entry read Nancy Davis Hamilton, 1962. There's room for your name now, Grandma said softly. Sarah was examining the journal with professional interest. This creates an interesting legal situation. The bracelet wasn't part of your grandfather's estate. It's a separate family tradition with its own documented history. This significantly strengthens your position if Madison or your parents try to claim it. There's more, Grandma Nancy said, pulling out another document. I visited First National Bank yesterday and spoke with Marcus Jenkins, who handled James's estate. He provided me with the transaction records for your education fund and trust. The bank statements told a damning story. 2 months after my grandfather died, $50,000 had been transferred from my education fund to my parents' personal account. 3 days later, a check for nearly that exact amount had been written to Elegant Occasions, the company that had planned Madison's extravagant wedding. When I turned 25, the trust that should have come to me had instead been dispersed through several smaller transactions, ultimately funding the down payment on Madison and Thomas's house. The paper trail was clear and undeniable. This is open and shut, Sarah said, her tone professionally detached, but her eyes sympathetic. If you want to pursue legal action, you have every right to do so. I sat back, feeling overwhelmed. I need time to think about this. Of course, Sarah agreed. But there's one more thing you should know. The statute of limitations on this kind of breach of fiduciary duty is typically 6 years from discovery. Since you only learned about this recently, the clock just started ticking. As we were preparing to leave, Sarah's doorbell rang. To my shock, the person standing on her porch was Thomas. How did you find me here? I demanded. I followed you, he admitted. I've been parked down the street from your apartment since early this morning. I need to talk to you. Sarah looked ready to call the police, but something in Thomas's desperate expression made me pause. It's okay, I told her. I'll hear him out. We stepped onto the porch, where Thomas immediately thrust a large manila envelope into my hands. What is this? I asked warily. Evidence, he said simply. After you left last weekend, I overheard your parents talking with Madison. They're planning to claim you stole the bracelet. They've already taken photos of your apartment to try to prove you don't deserve it. I opened the envelope and found printouts of email exchanges between my parents and Madison, discussing various schemes to get the bracelet from me. The most recent, dated just 2 days ago, detailed a plan to claim the bracelet had been temporarily loaned to me and was actually promised as collateral for a loan they had given to Madison. "Why are you doing this?" I asked Thomas. "They're your family too." "Because it's wrong," he said simply. "And because Madison needs to face reality. The spending, the lies, the manipulation. It's destroyed our marriage, our finances, and now it's destroying her relationship with her sister. Someone needs to put a stop to it." I studied him, seeing genuine regret in his eyes. "You really love her, don't you? Despite everything." "I do," he nodded. "But love without honesty and accountability isn't healthy. I've enabled her for too long." As Thomas left, Grandma Nancy and Sarah exchanged meaningful glances. "The plot thickens," Sarah remarked dryly. "But this actually helps your position considerably. Their premeditated plans to deceive undermine any legal claim they might try to make." "What do you think I should do?" I asked, feeling torn between the desire for justice and the exhaustion of continuing this family conflict. "Legally speaking," Sarah began, "you have several options. You could sue for the full amount that was misappropriated plus interest. You could file a criminal complaint for theft or fraud. Or you could seek a more private resolution through mediation." "And non-legally?" I asked. Sarah's professional demeanor softened slightly. "That's not for me to say. Justice and peace don't always walk hand in hand." "Think about it carefully," Grandma Nancy advised as we drove back to my apartment. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." When we arrived, I found a padded envelope had been slipped under my door. Inside was a bank manager's business card and a handwritten note. "Call me regarding the Davis family trusts. Information you should know." The twists kept coming, each one revealing another layer of deception. As Grandma Nancy prepared to leave, I impulsively hugged her tightly. "Thank you for always seeing me," I whispered, "for valuing me when no one else did." "You were always the one who reminded me most of Elizabeth," she replied, touching the bracelet on my wrist. "Strong, principled, and far wiser than anyone gave you credit for." After she left, I sat alone in my window seat, watching the sunset paint the city in gold and amber. The bracelet caught the light, its Celtic knots seeming to shift and move. 5 generations of Davis women had worn it before me, each facing their own challenges and making their own difficult choices. What would Elizabeth Davis do in my situation? The answer came with surprising clarity. She would seek justice, but never at the expense of her own peace. She would stand firm in her truth, but not allow bitterness to consume her. And most importantly, she would use this moment not just to right past wrongs, but to chart a new course forward. With that resolution forming in my mind, I picked up my phone and called the bank manager. Whatever revelations awaited, I was finally ready to face them head on. The tension in my apartment was palpable. Madison stood near the kitchen counter, her normally perfect appearance noticeably disheveled. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the nervous way she kept twisting her wedding ring. "I didn't expect you to actually agree to meet with me," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "I almost didn't," I admitted, keeping a safe distance between us. After her threatening text messages, I had been hesitant to let her into my home at all. But something in her voice when she called that morning had sounded genuinely remorseful. "Nice place," she said, glancing around. "It's cozy." Coming from Madison, this was practically effusive praise. "What do you want?" I asked, not interested in small talk. She took a deep breath. "The bracelet. I need it, Debra. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." I touched the silver at my wrist instinctively. I had barely taken it off since Grandma Nancy had given it to me. "Why?" "So you can pawn it to pay off your debts." Madison flinched. "Thomas told you." "He told me enough," I said. $300,000 in debt. Foreclosure. Your spending addiction." "It's not that simple," she protested weakly. "It never is with you, Madison." I sighed, suddenly tired of the whole situation. "But the answer is no. This bracelet was given to me, not you. It's not just about the monetary value. You don't understand, Madison said, a note of desperation entering her voice. Mom and Dad are counting on this. They've promised the bracelet as collateral for a loan to help us keep the house. If I don't bring it back, we lose everything. And that would be my problem because… The coldness in my voice surprised even me. Madison's eyes widened. Because we're family. Family, I repeated incredulously. The same family that stole my inheritance. The same family that never showed up for any of my important moments. The same family that thinks my apartment is terrible and my life is pathetic. I never meant to hurt you, Madison said quietly. But you did. Over and over again. You all did. Madison sank onto my couch, suddenly looking deflated. I've made such a mess of everything, she whispered. Despite everything, seeing my always perfect, always superior sister, so broken, stirred something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Why? I asked, sitting down across from her. Why the spending? The big house, the luxury cars, the designer, everything. What were you trying to prove? Madison was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I was trying to be enough, she said. Mom and Dad always had such expectations. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. The spending. It started as a way to create the life they expected, but then it became something else. Something I couldn't control. And they encouraged it, I realized. They wanted you to be their success story. While you got to be free, Madison said, looking up at me with unexpected intensity. You built your own life, made your own choices. Everyone might have been looking at me, but you were the one really living. This perspective was so at odds with how I had always seen our dynamic that it left me momentarily speechless. I was never free, I finally said. I was just forgotten, overlooked, left to figure everything out on my own, while you got all the support and resources. I know that now, Madison acknowledged. Thomas made me see it. He said I've been so focused on what you had that I couldn't appreciate that I was taking things from you too. A knock at the door interrupted our unexpected moment of connection. When I opened it, I found my parents standing there. Madison's car is outside, my father said, without preamble. We knew she'd be here. They pushed past me into the apartment, my mother's critical gaze sweeping over my carefully renovated space, my father's attention immediately fixing on the bracelet on my wrist. Good. You're wearing it, he said. That makes this simple. We need that bracelet, Debra. Family emergency. No, I said firmly. Don't be selfish, my mother chided. Madison needs our help, and this is the only way. Selfish, I repeated incredulous. You stole $120,000 from me and you're calling me selfish. My father's expression darkened. That money was put to better use. Madison needed it. I needed it too, I cried. I needed it for college. I needed it to start my life without crushing debt. I needed parents who cared as much about my future as they did about hers. That's not fair, my mother protested. None of this has been fair, I shot back. But I'm done being the one who always gives while everyone else takes. My father stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Give me the bracelet, Debra, now. Or what I challenged, standing my ground. Or we'll take it, he said simply. It's a family heirloom. We can claim you stole it. Madison stood up then. Dad, stop. This isn't right. Stay out of this, he snapped. This is the only way to fix your mess. My mess, Madison's voice rose. You and Mom encouraged every expensive decision I ever made. You pushed for the big wedding, the luxury house, in the right neighborhood, the private schools. You wanted to live vicariously through me because your own lives weren't fancy. Enough. I stared at my sister in shock. I had never heard her speak to our parents this way. How dare you, my mother gasped. After everything we've done for you, like stealing from my sister, Madison demanded. Like lying to both of us for years. My father stepped toward me again. Enough of this. The bracelet, Debra. Last chance. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm. No, it's mine. Grandma gave it to me, and I'm keeping it. Then you leave us no choice, my father said, reaching for my wrist. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Gary. We all turned to find Grandma Nancy standing in my open doorway, a distinguished-looking man in a suit beside her. Mother, my father faltered. What are you doing here? Protecting my granddaughter, she said, simply stepping into the apartment. I had a feeling something like this might happen when Madison's car wasn't at her house this morning. The man beside her cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Davis. I'm Harold Bennett, executor of your father's estate. I understand there are some irregularities we need to discuss regarding the dispersal of funds designated for Debra. My father's face went pale. This is a family matter. It doesn't concern you. I'm afraid it does, Harold replied calmly. As executor, I'm legally obligated to ensure the terms of the will were followed. Nancy has brought some concerning documentation to my attention. You've been busy, my mother said accusingly to Grandma Nancy. I've been trying to right a wrong, Grandma corrected. One that's gone on far too long. My father turned to me, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. You would really do this? Tear this family apart over money? I didn't tear this family apart, I said quietly. You did that when you decided I was less worthy than Madison. When you stole what was rightfully mine. When you made me feel like I would never be good enough. Debra, my mother began. But I cut her off. No. I'm done listening to excuses and justifications. For once in my life, you're going to listen to me. The room fell silent as I took a deep breath, years of suppressed feelings, finally finding voice. I have spent my entire life trying to earn your love and approval. Working 2 jobs, putting myself through school, never complaining, never demanding attention, and none of it was ever enough. You stole from me to give to Madison. You belittled my achievements. You didn't even bother to show up for my housewarming after I spent months renovating this place myself. I turned to Madison. And you. You accepted everything as your due. The money, the attention, the praise. Never questioning why you deserved it all while I got nothing. You looked down on my choices, my career, my life, never realizing that I built it all myself while you had everything handed to you. Finally, I faced Grandma Nancy. You were the only one who ever saw me, who valued me for who I am, not who you wanted me to be, who trusted me with our family's legacy. I touched the bracelet, drawing strength from it. So no, I won't be giving this up. Not today, not ever. And as for the money that was stolen from me, I intend to see justice done one way or another. You'd sue your own parents, my father demanded. Before I could answer, the door opened again, and Thomas walked in looking surprised to find everyone there. I came to check on Madison, he explained awkwardly. Her therapist was worried when she missed her appointment. Perfect timing, Grandma Nancy said. Now, everyone who needs to be part of this conversation is here. My father looked like he was about to explode, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. For once she seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. What do you want, Debra? She asked quietly. It was the first time in my memory that she had ever asked me that question, and seemed genuinely interested in the answer. I want acknowledgement, I said after a moment's thought, of what was taken from me, of how I was treated, and I want restitution for my inheritance. We don't have that kind of money, my father protested. Then we'll find another solution, Harold Bennett interjected. Perhaps a payment plan, or liquidation of assets. Like selling the house, my mother asked aghast. If necessary, Harold nodded. The law is quite clear about misappropriation of inheritance funds. A tense silence fell over the room. The moment stretched heavy with decades of family history and the weight of decisions that would shape our future relationships. Then, unexpectedly, Madison stepped forward. I'll sell my jewelry collection, she offered, and my designer bags. Thomas and I were planning to downsize anyway. We can contribute to paying Debra back. Thomas nodded, looking both surprised and proud of his wife. I have some savings bonds, Grandma Nancy added. I was saving them for a rainy day. I think this qualifies. My father looked between them incredulously. You're all taking her side. After everything we've done for this family. That's just it, Dad, I said softly. You didn't do it for the family. You did it for Madison at my expense. And it's time to make that right. As the reality of the situation sank in, I saw something I had never witnessed before. My father at a loss for words. His authority, unchallenged for so long within our family dynamic, was crumbling before his eyes. We should continue this discussion with legal representation present, Harold suggested diplomatically. I've taken the liberty of scheduling a meeting tomorrow at my office. As everyone prepared to leave, Madison hesitated, then approached me. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I am sorry. I didn't know about your inheritance, but I should have questioned why I always got everything and you got nothing. That bracelet. Grandma was right to give it to you. You're strong in ways I've never had to be. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. As the door closed behind them, I stood in the center of my apartment, feeling as though I had just emerged from a storm I had been caught in my entire life. The bracelet seemed lighter on my wrist now, no longer a symbol of family conflict, but a token of my own strength and resilience. Elizabeth Davis would have been proud. The conference room at Bennett Legal Services fell silent as Harold finished reading the proposed settlement agreement. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the polished wooden table where my family sat in a tense semicircle. My parents looked diminished somehow. My father's usual commanding presence reduced to nervous finger-tapping, my mother's perfect posture, sagging slightly under the weight of consequence. To summarize, Harold said, placing the document in the center of the table, the Davis family acknowledges the misappropriation of funds from Debra's inheritance and agrees to the following terms of restitution. First, a payment plan of Part A, $1,500 monthly for 7 years to restore the principal amount of $120,000. Second, legal recognition of Debra's ownership of the Davis family bracelet with documentation of its provenance and value. Third, a formal letter of apology acknowledging the breach of fiduciary duty and familial trust. My father cleared his throat. The monthly payment is steep. With our retirement income, it's less than what you've been giving Madison and Thomas monthly for the past 5 years, Grandma Nancy pointed out quietly, according to their financial disclosures. My mother flinched at this revelation. I wondered how many other family secrets were being dragged into the light in this sterile conference room. We can extend the payment period to 10 years if necessary, Harold offered. But the terms of acknowledgement and apology are non-negotiable. I don't understand why this needs to be so formal, my father protested. We've admitted we made mistakes. Isn't that enough? No, I said, finding my voice. It's not enough. This isn't just about the money. It's about accountability, about making sure that what happened to me doesn't just get brushed aside or forgotten. Debra is being quite generous, Sarah Winters noted from her position beside me. She would be well within her rights to pursue criminal charges for fraud. The word criminal hung in the air, heavy with implication. My father's face went ashen. We'll sign, my mother said quickly. We just need a few days to review the payment terms with our financial advisor. That's acceptable, Harold nodded. We'll reconvene on Friday. As the meeting adjourned, Madison approached me hesitantly. In the 2 weeks since our confrontation at my apartment, she had begun therapy for her spending addiction and had already sold several of her most expensive possessions. Can we talk? She asked. Just the two of us. We found a small coffee shop near the law office, its quiet corner booth, offering the privacy we needed. Madison stirred her latte absently, seemingly unsure how to begin. Thomas and I are selling the house, she finally said. We found a smaller place closer to the kids' school. It's actually nice. Simple. I think we'll be happier there. That's good, I said, genuinely meaning it. How are you doing with everything else? One day at a time, she replied with a small smile. My therapist says I've been trying to fill an emotional void with material things, trying to buy Dad's approval mostly. I can relate to that, I admitted. Except I tried to earn it through achievement and responsibility. Neither approach really worked. Madison nodded, her eyes welling with unexpected tears. I never realized how much I envied you, Debra. Your independence, your real friendships, the way you built your life on your terms. I envied you too, I confessed. The ease with which everything seemed to come to you, the constant attention and approval. It wasn't real, Madison said softly. None of it was real. The perfect family was just a story we all agreed to tell ourselves. We sat in silence for a moment, two women in their 30s, just beginning to deconstruct the narrative that had shaped our relationship since childhood. I found something when we were packing up the house, Madison said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a faded photograph and slid it across the table. It showed two little girls, maybe 5 and 9 years old, arms around each other, identical gap-toothed grins, directed at the camera. It took me a moment to recognize ourselves. Grandma took this, I recalled. At the lake house the summer before you started middle school. We were close, once Madison said wistfully. Before everything got so complicated. Before Mom and Dad decided which of us was the golden child and which was the scapegoat, I said, using Dr. Reynolds' terminology. Madison winced, but nodded. I've been reading about family dynamics too. It's illuminating and painful. I studied my sister's face, seeing for perhaps the first time the vulnerability beneath her carefully constructed facade. Do you think we could ever get back to something like this? I asked, tapping the photograph. Not exactly like that, she answered thoughtfully. We can't be those children again. But maybe something new, something honest. The conversation marked a tentative beginning, a fragile bridge across years of resentment and misunderstanding. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. That would take time and consistent effort on both sides. But it was a start. 3 days later, my parents signed the settlement agreement. The formal letter of apology arrived a week after that, its carefully worded sentences clearly crafted by their lawyer, but signed in my father's distinctive handwriting. It wasn't the heartfelt reconciliation part of me had always longed for, but it was acknowledgement, validation, proof that what had happened to me mattered. Grandma Nancy moved into a senior living community just 20 minutes from my apartment. Our Sunday dinners became a cherished ritual, her stories of Elizabeth Davis and other family history filling in the gaps of my understanding of where I came from and who I might become. I want you to have these too, she said one evening, sliding a stack of leather-bound journals across my dining table. Elizabeth's complete writings. Her business records personal thoughts, even some poetry. She was an extraordinary woman. Thank you, I said, running my fingers reverently over the aged leather. For everything, Grandma. For seeing me when no one else did. You were always easy to see, dear, she replied with a gentle smile. You shone so brightly, even when they tried to dim your light. The promotion at school came through, allowing me to finally quit bartending at Murphy's. My colleagues threw me a proper goodbye party, complete with a cake decorated to look like my apartment building. You're always welcome back for drinks on the house, Rick promised as he hugged me goodbye. Our favorite teacher deserves to be celebrated. Life settled into a new rhythm. The monthly payments from my parents arrived punctually, though our personal interactions remained strained and infrequent. Madison and I met for coffee every few weeks, slowly rebuilding a relationship based on honesty rather than competition. Thomas found a new job with a smaller firm, working more reasonable hours and reconnecting with his children in ways his previous lifestyle hadn't allowed. 6 months after our confrontation, I finally decided what to do with the photo of the bracelet that Grandma Nancy had suggested I take. On a quiet Sunday evening, I created a social media post, sharing its image along with a brief version of its history and how it had come to me. This bracelet belonged to Elizabeth Davis, in the 19th century, a woman whose business acumen and determination built a family legacy, I wrote. It has been passed down through generations to women who embody her spirit of independence and resilience. When I received it from my grandmother, it became a catalyst for healing deep family wounds and reclaiming my own worth. Sometimes the most valuable inheritances aren't just about monetary worth, but about the stories they carry and the strength they inspire. What family heirlooms have special meaning in your life? I didn't expect much response, but by morning, the post had thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. People shared stories of their own family heirlooms, of inheritance disputes, of finding peace after family conflict. Private messages filled my inbox, many from women who saw their own family dynamics reflected in my story. One message in particular stood out from a young woman named Jamie, reading about your bracelet and family journey gave me the courage to finally confront my own parents about the unequal treatment between me and my brother. We had our first honest conversation in years. Thank you for sharing your story. What began as a simple post evolved into something larger. With encouragement from Allison and Grandma Nancy, I started a blog chronicling my continuing journey of family healing and self-discovery. The response was overwhelming, creating a community of people navigating similar waters of family dysfunction and reconciliation. A year to the day after the failed housewarming party, I hosted another gathering at my apartment. This time, the guests included not only my closest friends, but also Madison and her children, Thomas, Grandma Nancy, and even my parents, who arrived awkwardly, but with a houseplant and a bottle of wine. As I looked around at this imperfect assembly, I realized that healing doesn't always look like perfect resolution. Sometimes it looks like difficult boundaries. Sometimes it looks like tentative new beginnings. Sometimes it looks like learning to value yourself, even when others have failed to do so. The bracelet caught the light as I raised my glass for a toast, its silver gleaming against my wrist. 5 generations of Davis women had worn it before me, each facing their own challenges, each finding their own path forward. Now it was my turn to continue that legacy, not just of the physical bracelet, but of the strength, resilience, and wisdom it represented. To new beginnings, I said simply, and to the family we choose to be. The echo of glasses clinking filled my apartment, the home I had built with my own hands, now filled with the people who truly saw and valued me. The road ahead might not always be smooth, but I would walk it with confidence, secure in the knowledge that my worth had never depended on anyone else's recognition. Like Elizabeth Davis before me, I had found my own path, claimed my own legacy, and in doing so had finally come home to myself. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against your own family? What family heirlooms hold special meaning for you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing. And if you know someone who might find comfort in knowing they're not alone in family struggles, please share this with them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and peace on yours.